of independence, things that took place. This is a clear indication, as you will see. This apparent reality is visible even in his personal appearance. His attire of contemporary military fatigue and traditional Arab garments speaks neatly to his contradiction. Now his outfit reflects the global fragmentation, a form of cross-fertilization referred to in global studies as hybridization. The mixing of different cultural forms and tastes facilitated by global economic and cultural changes. Now, and the stylish sport watch, look at his hands. Look at the stylish sport watch he's putting on right there. As he condemns the United States and its allies at his handheld microphone, his retreating sleeve exposes this watch, probably a Timex product that is as American as an apple pie will be. Now, this contradiction shows how complex the struggle by Al-Qaeda could be, how contradictory it could be to these people who tend to want to place a holy jihad to the rest of the world. Now, I will just conclude here by saying that Africa is a weak link in the global war against terrorism. In the age of globalization, it is very crucial that we pay attention to some of these weak spots, because we are living in a world that is much more complex than it was some 30, 40, 50 years ago. I'll give you some very recent example. A pastor in a small congregation in Florida just last month only threatened to burn the Quran. Now, as cable news is broadcasting that piece of information here in the United States, it is being watched in Kabul at the same time. It is being watched in Kabul in Afghanistan, it is watched in Somalia, and Muslims are already on the street. Less than 2 hours that the man got the news to the air. Now, we are living in a world that is much more challenging, and it's important to maybe pay more attention to these weak links in the global war against what we call Muslim extremists. I'm trying to keep to the timing so that we can have some exchanges in terms of questions and answers. So I'd like to stop at this point, and if you have some questions or some ideas, you have the floor to. Yes, sir.
Why do you think Africa, as you say, I'm quoting what you said, why do you think Africa is the weak link in terms of terrorism?
Africa is a weak link because Africa has what they call weak states. Africa has failed states. Now, when a country cannot take care of its space, that creates a weak link. That country becomes a fertile ground for extremists who sneak in like they did in East Africa in the late 90s and join NGOs or what they call non-profit out here. Now they join the ranks and they turn around and they mobilize people, they mobilize other younger extremists, and then they use them to create what they want to get. So Africa is a weak link because of the failed state, because of the poverty, because of the general atmosphere of carefree that you have out there. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
You said that in pre-colonial conflict there were as many as 10,000 different polities.
Right.
That today the plurality of population conflict practices Islam. And you mentioned so many attacks. It would seem that these are attacks by Muslims upon Muslims. To what extent can we attribute this to the distortion of the traditional African map as a result of colonialism? I guess to synthesize the question, how much of this can be blamed on European colonialism?
Well, I will link this to the arbitrary manner in which European colonizers divided Africa. The 1884 Berlin Conference in Germany was a one-item agenda, actually. European powers went to Africa. They realized that there was going to be conflict amongst them in the course of, taking different part of the continent for themselves. So Otto von Bismarck, the then German Chancellor, convened a conference in Berlin, 1884. They met and decided and carved out a strategy that will not bring conflict while they are partitioning Africa for themselves in different parts of the continent. So that in a very large extent account for the weak state that we have in Africa. The weak state, the failed state, or the rogue state, and we can associate them in different. Somalia is a good example of a rogue state. There's no real government in place. All right? There's anybody does anything. You have different groups of cartels. You have different groups of armies, I should say. And you have a government a US-backed government that is not recognized by anybody. This also accounts for the occasional piracy that you have toward that coastal area there. There's nobody who is in charge. That's a good example of a rogue state. Now there are so many weak states. Cameroon, my country, is a weak state. It's only a potential bombshell. At any time, anything can happen. This is a fairly recent attack, and all that is there in the air in the media is speculation. Even the men, the Nigerian Delta people, it's not clear if they are the ones who actually affected that. So fairly 2.5 weeks ago, it is still being. It takes a while, I would imagine, for experts to do the finding and come up with the real cause or the real root of that particular attack. But the very fact that
the organization that's accused is that an Islamic organization, an Islamist organization.
No, it's not.
Oh, that what men?
The organization that's been accused of the bombing.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. The men operates in like what you have in the south here in the Gulf. The Niger Delta is
where the oil is. Yeah.
Exactly. That's
yeah,
where the oil is.
They're being abused by the oil companies.
That's exactly the truth. If you fly from Lagos, Lagos is in the west. You're flying towards the east, where the men southeast. You will see lots of oil fires flaring in the forest. You're burning stuff. When the airlines come to land, if you look very carefully, you will see the waters glaze with oil. And that oil is from the crude oil. The whole area is not developed. It's like Houston. And what made Houston what it is oil. And those who are drilling there using the revenues from the oil to develop it. The shell, you have the Mobil, you have the Ajib, that's the French company. Then you have Texaco, you have American Gulf oil companies. There's been no attempt to build schools, to build hospitals, good homes. And so people stay there, they say, we were here, and these people come, they told us they are looking for oil. We thought they are looking for palm oil. Palm oil is the one that you eat. All of a sudden, we didn't see any palm oil. They started drilling from the ground, and we started falling sick. These are the children of those who were there. And because they witnessed what has happened, Nigeria drills oil from there and then sends the crude oil to the north where the refinery is. Didn't build a refinery in the south. Now is the time for them to get angry. And so that's why they are attacking Nigeria. It has nothing to do with Islamic religion. This is a homegrown, you can't call them terrorists either, because they are disrupting the government. Some people in Nigeria are taking the big with them. You can see the way I'm talking.
This attack is such a big story because it was so uncharacteristic.
Yeah, it's the movement for the emancipation of the Delta region. That's why they've chosen to. I could talk more to it. I was just interested in why you didn't
So, in the context of Onika, terrorism is a state of mind for countries that are trying to have a self-determination. So does it make your definition the same or different now? Terrorism, from what you heard from him saying, the Delta region is trying to be part and parcel to get the benefit out of the oil situation. Do you understand my point? What is terrorism for others may not be terrorism for us.
Absolutely. I get where that it's like a few months after 9/11. The then president made, I wasn't here then, but at least I was close to the media, get that. President George Bush said they are going to smoke out the terrorists and either kill or put them behind bars or something. And that if that in the whole world, if you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. And so that's a very controversial kind of subject to delve in. But I would say that it depends on who is speaking, because if you let me give you one good example. In the Islam culture, they don't do what they call visitation when somebody dies. Corpse is something that when somebody dies, they hurriedly, expeditiously bury that person. But I saw in 2004, 2003, when one of the sons of the former president of Iraq was killed, they paraded the image all over in TV. And that kind of thing goes a long way to, incite those extremists. So to them, as they are coming to fight, to them, they feel that the West, the terrorists, are attacking their own religion, actually. So there's such a thing as poverty of dignity as well. If you look at all those carrying out these attacks, all the fellows who perpetrated 9/11, they came from relatively very well-to-do families. Osama bin Laden himself came from an upper middle-class Saudi family, actually. So you see a particular trend. So it depends on who is standing. That was a very good.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. I thought I saw 2 hands up. And then if people want to stay and you can stay with it, that's great. But we'll formally end at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on a couple of points that you're making that I think maybe might not be as explicit. For example, Botswana and South Africa, those are Christian countries, right? So there's not a strong Islamic presence there. And I think what everyone is trying to hit upon is that the Islamic fundamentalist terrorism is more of a justification. We have to look at what is underlying these issues, and religion is used to justify the actions. Wars are fought primarily for land and the resources that are under the land, and religion becomes a motivating or rallying force, especially for the young who see not much else in their future. And I think that is a point that really should be brought out. I mean, you've made it a couple times explicitly, but it's not this religious wars that so much of the popular discourse tries to portray it as.
Thanks, Dr. Shetty. In fact, I tried to work within the confines of the time slot. I actually explored that in a couple of paragraphs.
It was there.
But thanks,
I just wanted to make sure.
Right.
One last.
Or back here, you haven't had a chance.
Okay.
Now, I just wanted to, kind of along with Dr. Shelton, but when you show the picture of Osama bin Laden and the contradiction in his wear and the way he's wearing, that in itself says that it's not just a religious basis, because he wouldn't be wearing a watch or the military garb that was from another country if it was about him. He would just be in his religious garb, I would think. So that was interesting that you brought that up. I'd never really paid attention to what he wears and the technology he carries. It's very contradictory. So, thank you.
Okay, one last question.
Yeah. All these points that have come into play. A prior military translator served overseas a couple times. I've noticed one of the biggest things, especially when the idea of dealing with Islamic, and I use the phrase Islamic extremists, because in every religion there's going to be an extremist who follows a distorted view of the word of their religion, and the idea that terrorism itself is an act to incite terror amongst the people, because in a lot of people's coordinated beliefs, out of chaos,